Well, here we are many months into the Russiagate scandal, whose supposed inciting incident has been really demolished in a memo that was recently put out by the VIPS, the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. I'm here with Ray McGovern, very happy to be here with him, a founding member of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, a former top analyst at the CIA, an all-around great guy. Now, this memo that you put out, your group put out on Monday, debunks one of the central claims of the January 6th assessment by the ODNI that Russian hacking was involved in directly trying to influence the US election, specifically about some new forensic evidence about files being copied rather than hacked. Could you put this into context for us? What does this mean?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me say that we in Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity are blessed with all manner of expertise. Doctors, lawyers, we don't have any Indian chiefs, but we do have highly technical people, retired people, two of them former technical directors of the National Security Agency. So these are people who devise the systems that are still in use, people who know what they're talking about. Now, it got a little tired for us to keep repeating the fact that there couldn't have been a Russian hack that was responsible for the WikiLeaks disclosures because of the technical aspects, okay? Now, when I was working in government, okay, I was a national intelligence officer, and we had squishy stuff to do, like what happens if the Italian communists come into the government? Well, you know, talking, that's hard, okay? Mm-hmm. But then we also had technical things. What happens if the Turks shut down our collection devices against Russian ICBMs? Then, if you're blessed with people who know what they're talking about from the technical point of view, man, it's great. Mm-hmm. Because you know who's honest, you know things that can be proved by physics, right? And yes, we will lose this collection device from Turkey and that, but we have other stuff coming online, so it won't be so. So all I'm saying here is that when you get technical experts who know what they're talking about and have proven honest records, that's a real blessing. So I've been turning to Bill Binney, who is the most recent technical director of the NSA, and saying, Bill, why do you say that this had to be a leak and not a hack? And he says, well, Ray, I know the program that they're discussing. I helped devise it. And now I can talk about it. Mm-hmm. So how's that, Bill? Because Ed Snowden brought the slides out, okay? Right. He shows where all the trace routes are, all the things inside the network. We're talking about the internet network, right? And I know it's hard for you to believe, Ray. I know you're looking at me kind of funny, but yes, it is true. NSA tracks every email and every telephone call. They don't listen to them, but they store them, okay? And they can get them back. Obviously, mm-hmm. They can retrieve them. Right. So if this capability was in place, and we know it was, and someone hacked into the DNC, NSA would surely know it, okay? They would know who hacked it, and they would know who the recipient was. So trust me, Ray, that's the way it works. You want to see the slides? He shows me the slides from Ed Snowden. Right. He says, see these trace devices? They're all through the system. The email is broken into little packets when it's sent, and then the packets are all labeled so they know how to put them back together. See? So, Ray, trust me, it has to be a leak. Somebody put a thumb drive into the DNC computers, and that's how Julian Assange got his information. Now, that's an issue that we believe has been resolved. However, now we come to the business about the so-called Russian hack, okay? Mm-hmm. Because there has been evidence, so-called, that the Russians also hacked into the DNC computers. Now, what was that evidence? For some strange reason, it was never included in any of the CIA, NSA, FBI assessments. Right. They always just said, we assess this, and we also assess that, and we assess the other thing. No evidence there. It was an embarrassment to the intelligence profession.
Yeah, half the report was about RT.
RT running a third-party candidates discussions.
I know. Attack on democracy.
Subverting our democracy. So it was a real amateurish job. And it's not a surprise because you had Clapper and you had John Brennan running the thing. So what do we have now? Well, people, independent people, that we just really learned about 3 weeks ago, have looked into the metadata associated with the so-called Russian hack into the DNC and came up with incredibly interesting forensic conclusions, like forensic, like physics and capabilities of the internet, which say that when, well, let me kind of draw the little chronology here, and I'd ask for the patience of all you listening here or watching, because it's a little bit complicated, but I'll try to make it simple. June 12th, 2016, last year, Julian Assange announces, we have emails related to Hillary Clinton that we are going to publish soon.
Right.
June 12th. June 15th, just, what, 3 days later, right? CrowdStrike, the DNC contractor, announces that the DNC system has been compromised. Someone has adulterated or inserted malware, is what they said, into the system, and we think it was the Russians. There's evidence that it was the Russians. Okay, that's the 15th of June, 3 days after Julian said, whoops, here's coming. On the same day, surely by coincidence, this Guccifer 2.0 raises its head and says, aha, the DNC, CrowdStrike is right, we did it. Okay,
right.
We did
it was all
it.
me.
Yeah.
Right, I figured it out.
And we're working for WikiLeaks. Okay, right. Oh wow! Now, what happens next? Next, we know that on July 5th, so a couple weeks later, someone, not hacked, but someone copied information from DNC computers or the local area network having to do with their server. And that someone was on the East Coast because the metadata shows that it was Eastern Daylight Time, and it was copied at a speed that far exceeds anything that the internet is capable of. What does that mean? For the layman, it means that it's not a hack. Hack is, you do it from a remote site,
right,
and you hack in, and the only thing you can do that so quickly, and I can give you the speeds if you like, but they're mind-boggling, is if you have a thumb drive, for example, stick it in the computer, then you can run it at those kinds of speeds. That's important, okay? So that means that particular, now we're talking about a different download, or different copy now. We already, I hope, disposed of the one that Julian Assange got. This is very different. Now, why would they do that? Well, the 12th of June, 15th of June, as soon as they learned that Julian Assange had emails related to Hillary Clinton, what are you going to do? Well, as I reconstruct it, what we do is we say it's from the Russians. And so CrowdStrike, who's working for the DNC, announces, there's malware, and we think it was the Russians. And then immediately, same day, Guccifer said, yeah, we did it, and we're working for Julian Assange. Okay. Now, the idea, of course, this is how we interpret it. The idea was, since Julian Assange was going to come out with emails, and God knows when, maybe he'd do it right before the Democratic National Convention. My God, that would be awful.
Right.
So we'll say that he got it from the Russians, and that way we can divert attention from what's in the emails. Because God knows how much he's got there. He might be able to show that we stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's probably in there, you know.
Right.
So let's do this little preemptive move. Let's, in June here, before he ever gets this stuff out, before Julian doesn't adulterate these things, what he does is sort of array them in searchable form. It's going to take a while, right? Okay, so we have a little time. We've got 6 weeks or so. Or they didn't know how long, but let's do it right away. And so when Julian Assange comes out with this, they're all set to say, aha, it was the Russians hacking. Now, this was a I remember the old movie or book, Magnificent Obsession, right? This was a magnificent diversion, because as soon as Julian Assange outed with the emails related to Hillary Clinton, that was on the 22nd of July,
Right.
3 days before the Democratic National Convention began, they were prepared, okay? They were prepared to say, aha, Russia did it, Russia did it. You can see them sort of sitting around a table, here's Hillary. She, my God, what are we going to do? What will Bernie say? I mean, he's already said he'd acquiesce, but what will he say now? And somebody says, I know what we do. We'll blame the Russians. And I think about Russians. But it wasn't the Russians, it was Julian Assange. Well, that's all right. We'll say that Julian Assange was working for the Russians. Well, yeah, but what's the rationale? Oh, come on. The Russians want Trump to win because Trump has said nice things about Putin. Oh, this is going to be easy to prove. Well, anybody got any better ideas? Okay, let's go with that. It worked beautifully. The mainstream media played all this story about why the Russians hacked. We have Jennifer Palmieri, okay? She's the PR person for Hillary Clinton's campaign. She brags later in a Washington Post article that she took golf carts around to all the stations of the outlets there in the parking lot of the convention, and she was pushing this line that the Russians hacked, and she said, it was a hard sell. Even we had some problems believing this, but we pushed it real hard. And then what she says, and then when we got back to Brooklyn. Now, Brooklyn, of course, was Hillary's headquarters. A couple of weeks later, then we got the intelligence folks and the correspondents, the journalists that work with the intelligence folks, and they told us, they gave us the information to prove that it was the Russia. And then the administration, the Obama administration, began to confirm what the intelligence folks were giving us, and then we were really on a roll. Then we had some, tangible. You're talking about the leaks now. These are the leaks that Trump is trying to get to the bottom of. Comey wouldn't look at them. Right. Now he's trying to get whoever, I guess, Jeff Sessions to look into it. So, it's a complicated thing, but it's really pretty simple when you come right down to it. They knew Julian Assange had the goods on him. If anybody looked at the content of these goods, they would see, and this is not an exaggeration, they would see that Hillary and Debbie Wasserman Schultz stole the nomination for Bernie Sanders. Why did Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her 4 top people quit on the spot? Oh, did I tell you something? Okay. Right. But with the help of the media, they were able to make this magnificent diversion. And now when we look at the ostensible evidence for this and apply forensics to it, we come up with a conclusion that, hey, this was a leak from somebody inside the DNC. It could not have been the Russians because of the physics and because of the capability of the internet. That's big.
Right. And and it's not just that, this shows it wasn't a hack, this was a leak. It also shows that this was a prophylactic or deliberate leak with the Russian fingerprints being put on it in order to create this narrative. It was a cut and paste job, for God's sake. They found a available what do they call it, a format or a kind of a template. Template, yeah. And so they superimposed the stuff on the template and Cyrillic, Russian language there. So what I found at the time was of most interest was that people were assuredly just assuring everyone that this had to be a professional job. This had to be, really, really, it's, the GRU, the Russian, they're really good at this. And then, oops, they're left behind some
Cyrillic.
Yeah, they're so good they register their Microsoft Word username as Felix Edmundovich, written in Cyrillic.
Yeah, Felix Edmundovich, of course, was the first chief of the Cheka, the KGB. The Soviet
Boy, what a blunder! How silly they left that in.
They didn't want anybody to miss that. You know?
Yeah, right. I know. You know, in the VIPS memo that you guys put out called "Was the Russian Hack an Inside Job?" You ended it. You said, "We do not know who or what the murky Guccifer 2.0 is. You may wish to ask the FBI."
Yeah.
Why might we want to ask the FBI?
Well, the first question to ask Director or former Director Comey, James Comey, who has this undeserved reputation of being, widely respected. He's the guy that approved torture, approved eavesdropping. Why he's widely respected, well, that's because the New York Times and the Washington Post but say he's widely respected. Why did James Comey, after it was revealed that the DNC had been hacked, so to speak, well, normally what would happen in that case, unless I'm sadly mistaken, would be that the FBI would be invited in to take a look, say, who did this, Or the DNC would say, would you please come in here and see who did this? But you know what? Neither seem to be very interested in looking at that. So, with all due respect, and not much is due, no, really, James Comey is guilty of malfeasance, not just misfeasance. People crying that this is an act of war, and he sits back and he says, no, I don't want to send my technicians in there. Why did he? Well, I can tell you why. It seems to me that when you're an intelligence analyst, you have this kind of bent to connect dots, right? That's what we call an all-source analyst. You look not only at the technical details, the forensics, now that we have them, but what was going on, outside, what you learned from the newspapers. And we know from that the CIA, with the help of NSA, had developed, it took them 15 years, okay? An incredible capability. Now, let me tell you how this went down, as personally for me. I often appear on RT, okay? Why don't I appear on CNN or MSNBC? They're not interested in what I have to say. Now, RT always waits till 11 o'clock in the morning, say, could you come in this afternoon, and we want to talk about that. And what's really queer about RT is that, unlike all the others, they never say, well, we're going to have a pre-interview interview. BBC does that. CNN does that. Fox News does that. I've been invited to pre-interview interviews by Fox and BBC, and then they say, well, thanks just the same, we have somebody else.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So, no pre-interview interview.
This is more like a job interview than a news interview.
Yeah. So if you want to appear again, right? So what happens? Okay, they always call me around 11 or so. This time, 7:15 in the morning. Okay, I'm just kind of walking, need some coffee. And they say, Mr. McGovern, can you come in right away? We have this incredible disclosure from WikiLeaks. This is the 31st of March, right? And can you come in? Because we need to discuss it right away. I said, well, you're not even open yet. Oh, no, we're going to use the Eurovision studios, but can you get 9 o'clock? Can you make it in? So I'm thinking, rush hour traffic, how am I going to? Yeah, I'll do that. I say, send me the link. So I look at the link. I said, oh my God, yeah, I better get in there. But I better figure out what to say. So I'm driving down the carpool lane, right? Get my little cell phone. I call Bill Binney, the technical director, former of NSA. I said, Bill, have you seen this thing? He said, yeah. He said, man, this is something. I said, Bill, tell me what to say. He says, all right, look great. I was there when this started, right? 15 years ago. CIA, NSA, working on this incredible, sophisticated program requiring 700 million lines of code, okay? So I say, that sounds like a lot, Bill. He says, yeah, Ray, you got that right. He said, look at it this way. Every line of code costs $25. Do the math. do you do multiplication? I said, yeah,
Right.
yeah, that would be, even if this particular program, which was named Marble, even if that will only eat up 100 million of the code, then that's still billions of dollars. He
Yeah,
says,
right.
yeah, that's right. So you tell them that, right? Tell them it's incredibly sophisticated and tell them what it allows CIA and NSA to do. And that is to obfuscate, okay? That's the $3 word that
Right,
CIA
right.
uses in their original doc. We're not talking about reports, we're talking about Julian Assange magically getting, he says, from some contractor related to who had working for the CIA, these documents, original ones, okay? So what does obfuscate mean? That means you can hack into a system and obfuscate, kind of disguise who hacked in, right? And then it also allows you to work in 5 different languages, okay? Chinese, Arabic, Farsi, Korean, and Russian, okay?
Oh, so you can blame a variety of people, huh?
Yeah. Now, I haven't heard any Arabs or any Iranians or any Chinese or any Koreans complaining about being hacked. So let me just say this. I say, wow. So I wonder, and then I read before I go on air, that this capability was used in 2016. It was used by the CIA in 2016. Now, it doesn't say used in Russian or Korean or anything like that, but it was used. So I'm thinking, wow, this is RT, but you know, if it was CNN, I'd say the same thing. This is really remarkable. And so I tell RT with the background that I know and then what Bill Binney told me, and I said, and this comes from experts, so this would probably mean that we should allow for the possibility that so-called Russian hacking could have been hacking from real other professionals. Professionals to the point where they could do this, but then they would leave Cyrillic or Russian. Well, of course, that would be professional too. See, so you know, so this had to do with the reports of Russian hacking. And now, as I say, I'm an intelligence analyst, right? I know that. Do people who know the New York Times or read the New York Times know that? No, they don't. Interesting. This all comes from an incredible treasure trove of original CIA documents, which Julian Assange says are as interesting and as damning as all the documents that Ed Snowden released. That's something, okay? Now, what happens? Well, we know that it was used in 2016. So McGovern says, wow, now could this be connected here? And McGovern says, oh, we were in dangerous ground here, but you're an analyst and you call them like you see them. And so conceptually, I thought the president ought to know that there is this capability that he probably hasn't been briefed on. Maybe CIA Director Pompeo hasn't been briefed on it yet, okay? But it exists. Now, whether it was responsible for the Russian hack or not, I don't know. But the president could surely find out
Right.
if they told him. Now, this comes into the deep state stuff, okay? It would be equally possible for me to believe, and I've been around for a while, okay, 50 years, that Pompeo has never ventured to ask the guys, the cyber attack guys that John Brennan set up. You have to remember, 5 years ago, John Brennan restructured the whole agency and created a new directorate for cyber warfare, okay? Hundreds of people working there. And all these tools that come out of this one program, Vault 7, were done by those folks. Now, Vault 7 had 3 releases in March. In other words, WikiLeaks released 3 reports on Vault 7. 1 and 2 were interesting enough, okay? It showed that the CIA had the capability to take control of your car, make it go 110 miles an hour, right? Whoa, that's something. And it had the capability of, you had a television in your bedroom? Well, you think it's off, right? It's monitoring everything you say, okay?
Right.
So that was, that was gripping enough. But when they got to Release 3, which was Marble, this program to obfuscate hacking, for some reason, the New York Times didn't think that that was news fit to print. Maybe they got some guidance on that. In any case, they didn't print it, but the Washington Post didn't get the memo. They put out Ellen Nakashima put out one report saying this could blow the whole, blow the top off CIA's cyber espionage program, but there was nothing in the Post after that. So the side issue here, or the teaching point here also is that the New York Times does what it's told by the CIA, and the Washington Post does sometimes not get the memo, but then it caters right to what's happened. So what I thought the president should know, and I did used to write these things for the president, I thought he should know that there is this program and that it could well be connected with the so-called Russian hack, and I also added that Vladimir Putin alluded to it. Now, he may have alluded to it in discussions with President Trump, but I know he alluded to it in discussions with Megyn Kelly.
Right,
Yeah?
right, yeah.
He said, there's this wonderful capability to, he didn't say obfuscate, but to disguise and hack and all that kind of, he said, you ought to look into it. And she said, well, we'll go to the next question. Okay.
Right. Well, they, in terms of this capability and the agencies that are capable of doing these things, let me ask you another question.
Sure.
So, in terms of the FBI had connections or potential funding for Fusion GPS, which put out this kind of pretty off-the-wall report about Trump being in the pocket of blackmail from the Russians and a bunch of salacious details. Recently, we've had John Brennan at the Aspen Security Forum say that if Trump fires Robert Mueller, then the intelligence agencies ought to revolt, basically, that they shouldn't carry out Trump's orders. We've heard from James Clapper that it's in the Russian genes to try to take over the whole world, destroy the United States.
Genetically.
Yeah. Now, you're an expert on Russia. This is your field of expertise. Are they? What do you think about that view of Russia, and what do you think about why do these people have these? Why would these people in particular have this view, have this outlook?
Well, it's always a mystery to me whether they really believe this stuff. I know that a lot of people make a lot of money by manufacturing and selling arms to folks that need an enemy. And Russia was a real convincing enemy when I was studying Russia. I mean, there was a lot there, right? Russia was on its back in the 90s. It's just now recouping its military capability. So that's one aspect here. Now, what's really strange is that nobody thinks about one major leak, okay? And that was a leak by the FBI director, James Comey. He had his people talk to the New York Times, okay? And he said some really bad things about Trump and what Trump would try to do and how he did a little memo, okay? And why did he do that? Well, according to James Comey, he wanted a special counsel appointed. Tout suite, as we say in French, right?
Right.
Okay. So what happened? A special counsel was appointed tout suite. And who is it? One of Comey's best friends, Bob Mueller. Now everybody says Bob Mueller is widely respected. Well, I'll tell you that I had a conversation with Bob Mueller in front of about 300 other people at Georgetown University. He had just stopped being FBI director. And so I said, now, Mr. Mueller, how do you feel about parallel construction? Do you have any qualms about getting intelligence illegally from wiretapping Americans and then giving it to law enforcement and saying, don't tell anybody how we get this, but these are leads, you can go get these bad guys. They get the bad guys, and then they lie not only to the judge, but to the defense, as to how they get tipped off from that thing. So,
Right.
so I said, Director Mueller, do you have any, legal problems with that? You know what he said? He says, no, not at all. We were given special authorities after 9/11. Next question. Now, I was in a pretty hostile audience there. Most of my former CIA colleagues were like, but there it was, So Mueller's supposed to be a lawyer. He's supposed to be a widely respected person. He was there when the torture took place. He was there, this big business about he and Comey showing their mettle when they prevented Ashcroft from being badgered about that program. That program continued. It just continued under a different name. How do I know that? One of our VIPS people is Colleen Rowley, worked for the FBI, and she did this is interesting, she did a memorandum for, an op-ed for the New York Times, okay, when Mueller was appointed special counsel. Now, why did she do that? Because she knows these guys. She's met with Mueller, okay? She told Mueller about the very serious deficiencies in FBI's conduct before 9/11. And he said, oh, this won't happen again. And she warned him in two memos that became public. You talk about guts. This was like 1 year before she was qualified to retire. Okay? So what happens is that the New York Times are really interested in what the FBI didn't do before 9/11. And they're also interested in Colleen Rowley's take on Comey when he was nominated to be head of the FBI. But when Colleen Rowley writes an op-ed about Comey and Mueller and their association and how they both knew about the torture and the eavesdropping and everything else, the New York Times isn't interested in that. We have to publish it online, okay? That tells you a lot. So what I'm saying here is what people keep forgetting is that there's a big leak here. It's done by the head of the FBI, self-admittedly, as people talk to the New York Times. It has to do with this private memo that he did, right? Times puts it in there, and Comey says, I wanted to get a special prosecutor nominated right away. And sure enough, the next day, we get a press report. Hey, guess who it is? Oh, it's Bob Mueller. Wow. Woo! Thanks. So that's how incestuous this whole thing is. And people keep saying, oh, this is good. Mueller's not going to come up with anything except what he wants to come up with.
On the Russiagate direction and just the opposition to a détente with Russia, towards having normal relations with Russia, a new sanctions bill against Russia was just passed, which is clearly, I think, targeted as much to Donald Trump as it is against Russia in any way. What do you see as the reasoning behind this opposition to détente, an opposition to having a peaceful, normal, potentially even mutually beneficial relationship with Russia?
Well, it's coming mostly from the Democrats, curiously enough. And initially, as I tried to explain before, it was an attempt to blacken the Russians to help Hillary become elected. And then, when she didn't become elected, we could still use this stuff. How can we use it? To show that Hillary didn't lose the election.
Right.
No. It couldn't have been that she was not such a good candidate or that nobody trusted her. Who could? Oh, it was the Russians. So most Americans now believe, according to the polls, that this fellow Trump that we have as president now is there because of Vladimir Putin helping him become elected. That's bad. That's really bad, okay? Now, what's the objective now? Well, the objective is not only to delegitimize Trump, but to keep the tensions stoked with Russia so that there can be no real détente, so that we can blacken the Russians and say, oh, look, they're... Now, I don't know anybody that you know that might want to think that the Russians are going to invade Estonia. Do you think they're going to? Okay. Or Latvia or Lithuania?
Probably not.
Have you been there? I've been there. I don't think it's worth it. Why would they? Okay. And the whole Ukraine thing, of course, there's not a scintilla of evidence that Putin or any of his advisors had any idea that they would reincorporate Crimea before we did a coup in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev
Right.
It was the most blatant coup in history, according to George Friedman of Stratfor. Why? Because because the machinations appeared on YouTube 16 days before the coup itself, with our Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, talking with our ambassador in Kiev, saying, oh, okay, Yats is the guy, have Klitschko waiting, and, we got to glue this thing. So Yats is the guy at Yats, okay? Now, Yats was Yatsenyuk.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that YouTube, I almost felt a little sorry for Yats, I said, gosh, here the guy's all primed. Surely he can't, he's compromised now. He surely can't become prime minister. And so I wake up on the 23rd of February, and I find out that there's a new prime minister. I wrote an article that said, yikes, it's Yats! Yatsenyuk, right? And guess what? The United States government, I recognized the new government immediately, even though it was a coup, okay? Mm-hmm. So, how did Vladimir Putin react to that? Well, he looked and said, my God, we told the Americans that NATO in Ukraine was a red line, and they did. We have the cable, thanks to Bradley, Chelsea Manning. We have that cable where they said, this is our red line, okay? Now, we can't countenance, Putin put it this way, and sometimes he has a pretty good sense of humor. He said, with respect to our naval base, our only all-weather, all-year naval base in Sevastopol in Crimea, we wouldn't like to countenance the notion of requesting permission to visit the NATO base in Sevastopol. We would much prefer. I know they're swell fellas. He said, it's swell fellas, but we would really prefer that it remain the way it is now. They're free to come and visit us in our naval base in Sevastopol. Well, that was a jocular way of saying, ain't nobody going to tolerate that. So when you talk about beating up the Russians because of Crimea, well, I don't like changing borders, but I dare say if I were an American and the Russians did something like that in Canada or even in Cuba, or actually they tried it in Cuba one time, and we reacted pretty strongly, as I recall, or Mexico, we would have done exactly the same thing. NATO is a military alliance, okay? So anyhow, so when you put all this together, you've got a synthetic, you've got a kind of an artificial construct of Vladimir Putin as devil incarnate, right? And the whole press does this meme, and everybody catches on, especially the Democrats, and it's the oddest thing I've ever seen. So here's Donald Trump. He wants to go and talk to Putin. And everybody says, this is really bad, And he does talk to Putin. And what happens? They get a ceasefire agreement. It's not a whole thing, but a little slice of Syria. Does that report in the press? No, that's reported in the press. Maybe, or
if they do, they say it's giving in to Russia.
Inside page, yeah.
Right.
So, if any of us have any interest in stopping the carnage in Syria, which we should, okay, we should applaud any Trump or any other effort to work with the other forces in play, not only the Russians, but the Syrians, the Turks, and the Iranians. If we don't have a common aim against ISIS, what do we have a common aim against? So the backbiting, and what's going to be interesting right now, Trump this week decided no more support, no more arms or money for the moderate rebels, so-called moderate rebels, the rebels that the U.S. has supported in Syria. That's big. That's the CIA's bag. That's billions of dollars invested in that. What's going to happen? Well, Trump has taken on the CIA on that issue. And what I'm recalling now is nobody's been around in Washington as long as Senator Chuck Schumer, the ranking Democrat in the Senate, right? Now, he had an interview with Rachel Maddow on the 3rd of January, okay? I said, Rachel, I used to think I used to think Trump was a pretty smart guy, but he's done a very foolish thing. She said, what's that? She said, he's taken on the intelligence people. and they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. So I thought he was a pretty smart businessman. He'd know how to play. He's done very foolish things. And Rachel Maddow says, "Oh, we'll go to break." Give me a break! You know, I mean, if it were you, wouldn't you say, are you saying that the President of the United States should be afraid of
the intelligence agencies? Yeah.
United States of America should be afraid of the intelligence? And of course, that's what he was saying. So why do I refer to that? The jury is out. He's taken them on a little bit. Whether he'll take them on the Russian hack, well, I don't know. Maybe Pompeo is afraid to ask these guys, or maybe he's afraid to ask. But if he's afraid, well, he's following the example of his predecessor, because Obama was deathly afraid of John Brennan. That's why he defended him when Brennan hacked into the Senate computers. That's why he tried to prevent the publication of the memo from the Senate on torture, CIA torture, because it showed that Brennan and the others had been lying through their teeth about the effectiveness of torture techniques. So Obama was very much defending himself, or defending them, I think, ultimately to defend himself. So whether Schumer is right, we're likely to see sooner rather than later.
Well, we're up on time, but I thank you so much, Ray.
Oh, you're most
Always
welcome.
good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Thanks very much.